I think about Moses and his father-in-law who spoke to him and said, this number of people is too great for you.
Mm-hmm.
When I think about the Apostle Paul and how he sent Timothy and Titus out
Mm-hmm.
to minister, it just shows us the importance of relationships, Elijah and Elijah. All of these things, as we read through Scripture, it shows us that God, and we say God creates everything, then God creates everything, and He makes everything available to His children. Speaking of which, one of the subjects that people tend to have a problem with is medication. People will take medication for high blood pressure because they have to. They will take medication for blood sugar levels because they have to. They will take medication for heart issues because they have to. They will take medication for just different respiratory and cancer issues because they have to. But when it comes to mental health, there's a problem when people have to take medication, and for whatever reason, um, mental different all kinds of mental health issues, we tend to have a problem with someone being diagnosed to take medication. So where are you all in that posture, and your thoughts about that?
Yeah, what I feel about that is we go to doctors because they have the expertise and the experience of doing it, and we go to get their direction. But some things we want to rebuke and rebuff. But I'm okay with medication. So all of those things you listed, um, diabetes or whatever the issue is, you say, okay, well, you can just make a life change. You can exercise and you can eat right. Yes, you can do that. But at this point, you may need some medication for the time being. And the same thing goes for our mental states. There are some mental states, some issues that people have that just can't go away with, okay, I'm going to say a prayer and I'm going to read this scripture verse and I'm just going to think positively. There are some real serious issues that may need medication, and you may not need the medication for the rest of your life, but maybe for a season, or maybe it is long term. But I think that we should avail ourselves to doing all of the things possible and necessary to heal ourselves and for us to have good balance. And that's in our physical health and in our mental health. And both are just as important. We can't live a what we would call a successful or healthy life with a unhealthy body or with an unhealthy mind, because we'll end up doing unhealthy things that will ultimately lead to our demise. So I think that's a big issue, to medicate or not to medicate. I think if your situation calls for medication, then you should medicate. Now, we don't want to get in a space where that's what we rely on. I'm just going to continue to eat fried chicken and macaroni and cheese, and I'm gonna eat pound cake for breakfast every day, but I'm just going to take this insulin or what have you. We do have to make some changes and some things on our part we have to change up. But if we need medication, then yeah, I feel we should take the medication.
Definitely believe that it is a choice. It's a choice. And if you make the choice to choose medication, then understand the the effects from it, right? And if you make the choice not to receive the medication, then know the effects of it at the same time. Know that if you're not going to take the medication, you have to be diligent. You have to be consistent to working on that area that you know is this biggest challenge for you. Because I have seen people who take medication and the results that they get, and I have seen people who can take the medication and the results that they can get at the same time. But it's work. It's work. It's a lot of work to not have a dependency on something. It's a lot of work. If you don't have the mindset, because we're talking about mindset, if you don't have the mindset to work it out for yourself, I feel, to really get, just like in business, I can give you this plan. I can tell you how to do this, this, and that. But if your mindset and your habits cannot line up with what I gave you, you will not see it through. Now and even when you take medication, you cannot depend on the medication to be a total solution to heal you. You know, medication does so much, but you still got to stop eating certain things. You still have to change the diet. The doctor still prescribes many times exercise and taking the sugar out or taking the salt. It's work. It's work that we have to do. Now, there was a study, and I actually did an ebook on this, detoxifying the mind from negative thinking, you know, to break poor habits off of our lives. There was a study done by a Christian woman who used to be a neuroscience, and her name is Caroline Leaf, and she did the study on the mind, and she broke it down, and she stopped the practice, mainly because she said she knew what it was doing to people. And the Lord spoke to her and showed her, because she studies the brain and she studies how the mind, you know, acts, and how you can heal the mind, because God supplied us with healing. Now, everybody might not believe in this, but this has been a study, just as well as scientists do certain studies. She has done certain studies as a neuroscientist, but it takes work. And she gives you this roadmap to kind of help you so that you can begin to detoxify your mind, and that you can actually start to lower your stress levels and deplete it. But it's a process. It's a process that you have to be willing to fight for. So I am not a fan of medicine, but if it is a choice, you have to make sure that you take care of yourself. And if you don't do it, you still have to make sure that you take care of yourself and be in environments like we talked about that will be able to help you on the journey, be able to cultivate you while you're on the journey for your own healing.
Let me just go back to that everything you all have said is very true, but I want to make sure that that we understand that when we're talking about these mental health disorders, there are some things I have, there are people that I know who are bipolar, schizophrenic, manic, just a lot of things, and they need medication to help them. And when they don't have it, there's a serious, it's a lot for them. They can't seem to navigate life without it. So I want you to always be serious about your medication, whether it's for mental health or for physical health. And like they said, physical health, work hard at it so you can come off the medication. Mental health, accept that you have to take the medication. And that's the biggest issue. Accept the fact that you got to take the medication to balance everything that needs to be balanced so that you can function. Hi, this is Reverend Irene Smith. Generationally speaking, I want to welcome you back to our conversation as we're talking about mental health. I have with me, continuing this conversation, Minister James Durham. You know him as that cowboy fan. Hey, Minister Durham.
That's me. Hey, Reverend. Glad to be here as always.
Amen. And Pastor Shamika Latte Oliver, the founder of Women Who Lead Connect. Hello, Pastor Shamika. How are you?
Hey, Reverend Smith. I'm doing good.
So as we continue our conversation about mental health, one of the ways that the church can assist in mental health is to talk about it. So many times there are things we say we just don't want to talk about or pretend like they don't exist, but we need to talk about it. And as we are coming up out of COVID, we are hearing more about lots of things that are going on in our families and in our communities and the nation at large. We hear about relationships between husbands and wives, while some people are preparing to divorce, but there are other couples who have really come through COVID and the struggle, and they are closer. So we have our children, some who have fared well, and some who really need to be interactive with other children. So let's talk about what's going on out here in this community when it comes to stress-related disorders, because I consider COVID as a stress-related disorder. So we have all these triggers. So let's first talk about some of the triggers that causes us to have this unbalance. Now, there are other mental health disorders, to be quite honest, that we know that don't stem from a trigger, but they stem from some neurological imbalance. So we understand that, but we're talking about those mental health disorders that are triggered by different events.
Yeah.
Minister Dorn.
So yes, just real quick, a quick commercial for our language, because you just mentioned something that I think is so powerful, and that something we need to incorporate in our lives is just talking about it, whether it be in the church or in our homes. So I think some language we should add to language we already using. We actually already using this phrase, and we use this phrase simply as a hello. We say, how are you? And really all we're saying is hello. But that's a question that I like to ask people that I'm close with. And I don't ask it of them every day, but I often check in with them. How are you doing? You know, what's going on? And that's a question that we should really have and utilize, and just ask the people and just see what's going on. And usually you're gonna have to ask it twice, because you're gonna say, how are you? You're gonna say, oh, I'm good, you know, things are well. That's just the typical response. But go deeper and say, no, really, how are you in this season? You know, where are you? Are you thinking about goals? Are you working on your goals? Are you proud of your day yesterday or what have you? So I just wanted to just give that commercial. But these triggers that we are facing, there are so many triggers in life that set us off. If we're working, you know, you get stress from deadlines, you get triggers from difficult colleagues, you know, people, just the competition in your career. You know, if you are retired, perhaps you get triggers because maybe you might feel like you don't have anything meaningful to do, although there are plenty meaningful things to do in retirement. You just mentioned COVID. People in COVID, if you're single and living by yourself, maybe there are many people that I know of, particularly who've dealt with loneliness. And that was a thing that took them to a dark place and made them feel sad and even depressed at times. There are folk who felt cooped up, those who felt cramped, like give me some elbow space. You know, at the Oliver House, it's always popping over there. It's a lot of people living under that household. You know, some people were experiencing cabin fever. You know, I need to get out. I'm used to going to the movies. I'm used to going to the gym. I feel cooped up and I can't take it anymore. And then now in this new space, as the country is opening up and employers are bringing their employees back to the building, there's a new stress that we're going to have to face. Like, oh, wow, we're going to have to get reacquainted. And now we're going to have to mourn whatever became our normal routine at home. Okay, I was able to work without having to get dressed. You know, I was able to watch TV and have meetings at the same time. There are so many people who are, I saw this Instagram post, and it was just a lady sitting in her car just bawling her eyes out, just wailing because she now had to go back to work and go into the building. But in reality, it may not look like that, but many people are going to be filled with great anxiety of returning. You know, am I vaccinated? If I'm not vaccinated, I'm unsure. How safe am I going to be? Or wow, I had a difficult boss and I was able to now be away from that difficult boss. And so there was some kind of barrier or protection, but now that's going to go away. I'm back. So we are coming upon this transition. And, you know, really, I think it would be good for employers to have therapists available for their employees to have a conversation and help them with that transition of back to being in person and working.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think that EAP, Employee Assistance Program, needs to be, we should have been using it, right? But it really needs to be there to help us to, you know, navigate, you know, every day. And I think that we need to be that, maybe the FAP, you know, that friend assistant program for somebody, or that CAP, that coach assistant program, you know, or the MAP, that MAP, that minister assistant program, you know, within, just not even just within our jobs, but within our churches, within our businesses, you know, as entrepreneurs, that have something that would be the conversation starter, right? That you said, hello, how are you doing? And then when we do say that, have the mindset to say, you know, make sure we have something to give back to them, make sure we are a resource for them. Because sometimes that trigger is, they just ask me, how am I doing? But I'm pretty sure they just want to know, that trigger, right, that we deal with, is something wrong with me. I've been mentally stressed out, you know, because that That's right there is a trigger. They're going to find out. You know, it's like that. Anxiety is they're going to find out. The anxiety is there's a fear. I don't want to expose it. I'm going to get judged. That whole mental arena that sometimes we live in, that we do so normal anyway. I believe that in our minds, we're always thinking that somebody is going to say something. We make up people that really don't exist. We create situations that we never get into. So it's like, hello, like, hey, you know, my name is such and such, you know, kind of like changing it. And I'm about to ask you, how are you today? And I'm, you know, to make it, to create relationship again, because it's something new. You never dated, a guy comes up to you, a girl comes up to you, and you're like, whoo, you know, it's new. So we have to have it in our mind as people. This is a new introduction. How can I introduce this? You know, a hello to them, a how are you doing, and allow it to be genuine, you know, so that they know that I care about them. I want to know, but I also want to be a resource. And maybe the resource can be once they say, you know what, it's been a tough day. I'm back at work. You're like, oh, I understand. Maybe the resource is in that word, that connecting word that says, I understand. I've been there too. We have to get feedback after they give, you know, their answer to how are you doing? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes.
You know,
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Reverend.
we have individuals who I speak with, and they said, don't ask me how I am doing, because if you ask me how I'm doing, I may go off on you, but rather ask me how I am coping, because how I'm doing, it changes from minute to minute sometimes, and sometimes hour to hour. So you ask me how I'm coping, I can tell you how I'm coping right now, and I can also tell you how I was coping a few minutes ago or a day or so ago. We have lots of folk now who are having to go back to the office, and the stress or the trigger is, I don't know if they're saying, I don't know if I want to go back to the office, because going back to the office exposes me to my coworkers, and I don't know whether or not they've had the vaccination or I haven't had the vaccination. I don't know if I want to go back to the office, because going back to the office means I've got to leave home, and I got some things going on at home. I don't feel comfortable leaving at home. Going back to the office, for some people, they're saying, with everything that I've seen on the TV and hear about in the blogs and everything about Black Lives Matter, I don't feel safe even driving, because if I'm coming home in the evening and I see blue lights, it's a trigger for me, and it triggers something in me, and I find myself, you know, feeling depressed, overwhelmed, and so it's a darkness, a depression that folk are literally dealing with, for trying to go back to the office, trying to live life in as normal a place as they can, but they're finding it difficult because of everything that they have seen and everything that they have heard. What do we as the church say to those people? A young man told me, Reverend Smith, I don't even feel comfortable going out anymore. He said, because I hear so much about the violence that is being deflected and impacted on African American men. I don't feel safe. What do we as the church say, and how do we help to lift individuals out of this depressed state and help them to move forward?
The first thing I would say, because like we don't want external forces controlling our lives. We don't want to shut down our life because there's potential for things to happen. So the first thing I would say to a person who's facing that is we should incorporate regular checkups with the therapist in your life, because they're going to help you to to see what's going on. So they'll evaluate you and they'll say, okay, here is what's going on. And you can, let's just call it a diagnosis. You can diagnose yourself with the therapist, and then they can help you find things that you can do, mental exercises and steps that you can take to take back control and take back the power in your life. I think it's so necessary for us to have regular checkups on our mental health as we do with our physical health. Hopefully we're going at least once a year to the doctor to get a physical or what have you. Hopefully we're going to the dentist every 6 months to get our teeth clean, and we doing all of these things. And if we want to if we want to get a expertise in a certain field or what have you, we go to school for that. We take classes for that. We should do the same thing for our mental health. We should do checkups. If you're in a relationship, you should do regular checkups in your relationship. Go see a family therapist, a counselor, or some clergy person. Go and sit with them and talk to them, because going back to what we said earlier, it will help us to be aware. It will help us to see things that we don't see on our own. It'll help us to go beneath the surface, so we don't think what's happened at the surface, maybe that's not the real trigger. Maybe that's not what's causing you to experience whatever it is you're experiencing. Maybe it's something underneath. Maybe there was a few things that you haven't dealt with before, and this one thing reminded you of something that wouldn't happen, and you went down this deep, dark tunnel. But it's very important for us to have checkups, because if you're in a relationship and you go and you talk to a counselor or a therapist, you might say, oh, wow, we didn't see that underlying issue that was a potential to cause something. So now we can attack it and we can work on it. Or you might find yourself high-fiving each other. Oh yeah, we're doing a great job, or what have you. So, but and the same thing with your individual self. You're like, oh wow, just talk to somebody and kind of see where you are. And it just helps you to live life intentionally. You don't just wake up and just go about your day mindlessly doing tasks. It helps you to be intentional in how you live your life. So that's the first thing I would say.
Yeah, I would definitely say is that and I know I don't like going I don't want anybody to feel like I'm going deep in that area or there she's going, but we got to apply the word. And the word says, as a man thinketh, so is he. As he thinks all the time about something, that becomes a belief system, right? We have to learn how to use this mind that is of Christ to regulate some things in our lives. Excuse my hand gesture. I'm getting, because my passion is coming out right now to see us healed in certain areas. And some of us are frustrated. Some people won't go to a therapist. They won't go to a coach because they already got their mind made up. And if you are not willing to change, God is not going to force you, right? Because he gives us something that's called a will, and a will is a choice. And if he can't get to that heart, ain't nobody getting to that heart. We have to get to a place that we do have to surrender ourselves to God. Do not forsake the assembly. Why is that? So that we can be in places so that we can receive testimonials and mentorships and get that heart of flesh that we need to be able to experience God in that moment. And some people are so rooted. Let's talk about that, because this is going to help us to break that chain. Some people are so rooted and this is how I always been. This ain't gonna work. That attitude has been there for a long time. And it has not been the pandemic, because I have seen people thrive under pressure. I can write a 10-page paper when I was in college the night before. If I ain't under pressure, I can have 3 months to write that paper, but it ain't being written until the night before it has to be due. And I can be up 12 hours, 15 hours, turn in at the last minute, come with an A or a B, right? And so that's how I operated. So some people can thrive under pressure and some people can't. And some people are going to be set in their ways. But in order for us to break this change, we got to break these ways. And I can say all day, go to it there. But if they don't trust, if the root of them is not trusting somebody, they're not going to do it. We have to, I believe, as a church, individuals, as church, as a body, is to, like we said, offer things, offer programs, put it out there. We need to be these living epistles, evangelists, and all these ways to be able to reach and ask God every morning, because we know that this is here. How can I serve you, God, on today? When I talk to my friend or my cousin or whoever it might be, my coworker, how can you use me to help that chain get broken off? Paul said, pray for me. He said, pray for me, because he knew that he had to be the one to go out. Come on, it says to pray about everything, worry about nothing, prayer and supplication and thanksgiving. See, there's a principle to having a peace of mind. He said, and then when we do that, you experience a peace that surpasses all understanding, that surpasses the pandemic, that surpasses the disease, the divorce, the loneliness, that surpasses all understanding. And if anything, think on the things that are lovely, pure, just, of a good report. And if anything be praiseworthy, think on those things. And then Paul said, pray for me. Pray for me. And so that's the position that we have to learn to be in and apply daily, because the enemy is going to come in like a flood. You didn't had hell and havoc on your job before you left it. It ain't changed. Some of it ain't changing. We didn't have calamities and tumultuous situations all the time. But will we get into his presence? I just want to say that, because I want to challenge some people on today that God's word is his word. And he has given us things that is going to shift things in our lives. But are we willing to put in the work? I'm standing for myself, right? Because I've been there too. When I have focused on the negative and got the results of having a whacked out mind, because I decided to focus on the doubt. I decided to focus on the flood where the enemy comes in. But then I had to realize that I wanted my own peace. So I had to make sure that I created some regimens and some diets and some supplements of the word of God to nourish my soul, so I can get back intact and in tune to hear what thus said the Lord. See, this thing takes work. And I'm saying this, and maybe this is just a part of my petition to God, but it's also a part of of something that I want to just speak to someone on today. If you want to see the difference, if you want to see the change, it literally starts with you. You want to see that shift at work? It got to start with you. You got to see it differently. Because God said he ain't come to give us the peace of this world. The peace that he gives us is different. It's different. So we're set apart. We got to see it different. We got to move differently. And we're going to feel some of these things. We're going to feel some of the anxieties, but we don't have to stay there. Okay.
So what I said to the young man was this, is that you have to start to think about what you are feeding yourself, Pastor Shamika, what you're saying. I told him you have to stop and start thinking about what you are feeding yourself on a daily basis. And if you are feeding yourself these videos, if you're feeding yourself this doubt, this self-doubt, if you're feeding yourself these insecurities, then this is what's going to grow.